Welcome back on the next part of my series on the 3 fundamental thrusting concepts in fencing. The last video we looked at the direct thrust, the fastest way to hit your opponent when their blade is not an immediate threat. We talked about how this thrust works especially well when your opponent stands lower than you, is not creating direct pressure or is moving in a way that does not interfere with your line. If you have not seen the first part yet, make sure to watch that one first, because the ideas from that video are important for really understanding today's topic. Because today we take the next step and look at what happens when your opponent does apply pressure and you can no longer attack safely with a direct thrust. At the end of the previous video, one question naturally came up. What do we do when the opening is there, but you know your opponent's defense will also be an attack? Or what if an attack is already coming your way? In that case, we need an additional component. Something that allows us to protect ourselves while we hit. No matter what rule set you fence under or what philosophy you follow, not getting hit is generally a good thing. To achieve that, we need to address the weakness of the direct thrust. The direct thrust does protect me, so we need to change the angle of the thrust to make sure we get into measure safely. At the same time though, this comes with a trade-off. We lose some reach and some speed, because we are no longer fencing on a completely direct line. But even here, the sources already give us a concept we can apply. The Absetzen. No matter how you personally do the Absetzen, the core idea is simple. I want to bring the opponent's strike or thrust under control with my crossguard, so that their action cannot hit me while I hit them at the same time. That basically means you need to bring the crossguard in a line where it can catch the blade of your opponent while you are not getting hit at the same time. This is a concept that appears across many different manuscripts, and it's something that you can be transferred to many other weapon systems as well. So let's take a look at a few examples. In the first example, we are looking at how to land a thrust into the preparation without provoking either a double hit or an afterblow. The same principle of timing that we are discussed in the previous video plays an important role here as well. To place the thrust efficiently, we first need to be in range and then assess whether our opponent is preparing to throw a strike. In this example, it is clearly visible that my opponent pulls the sword back into vom Tag. This guard is characteristic for this kind of action, because vom Tag usually indicates a strike from above. To avoid being countered by Zornhau or Shieldhau, we must make sure that we are structurally stronger than our opponent at the moment of contact. To do that, we adjust the distance and raise the crossguard higher, so that we can catch the opponent's blade with the strong of our sword. What is important here is that we initiate the thrust exactly when the opponent is beginning to chamber the strike. That way, if the blow comes towards our head, we already have the crossguard aligned and we can rely on it to protect us. You still need to make sure that you have enough strength and structure to withstand the force generated by your opponent's strike. That is why I recommend that after you land the hit, you press the blade outward once more and push yourself out to the side. This helps ensure that you do not get caught by a renewed attack after the initial exchange. This technique allows me to surprise fencers who like to chamber their strikes in order to generate more power and to intercept them before they complete their attack. In this example, you can see that my opponent is in vom Tag. From previous exchanges, I note that whenever I attack, he will strike to my open line. So in order to land a hit without being hit myself, I use the defensive thrust to intercept the incoming strike and catch it with my crossguard. However, this only works if you are truly certain that the strike will be hit to your head. To avoid being overpowered, it's especially important to thrust in a straight line towards the shoulder from which the strike is coming. This gives you a strong angle in the bind and allows to apply you as much pressure as possible. On top of that, you drive your opponent's shoulder backwards, which takes a good amount of force out of the strike. Here as well, you can wait for a slightly backward movement or in preparation so that you can use your opponent's momentum against him. As you can see in this example, if I were far away, he could beat my blade aside and strike over my crossguard to my head, which in the best case would result into a double hit. Again, I push myself away at the end of the strike to avoid a renewed attack from my opponent. This is definitely one of the riskier thrusts, and I only recommend it against opponents who like to respond to attacks by simply counter-striking and are willing to accept double hits. So with this technique, it's especially important to maintain a strong structure. So the key takeaways are: We use the defensive thrust when my opponent makes a preparation and I gain a timing advantage from it, and my opponent chooses to counter-strike instead of defending himself. But if you are thinking, how do I first bring my opponent's blade under control and only then thrust, so that I do not have to worry about afterblows or doubles at all? Then you can already look forward to part 3 of the video series, the structure breaking thrust. So to make sure you don't miss it, feel free to subscribe.